Okay, I'd like to ask with the obvious question. Everybody must ask you this, but what is enlightenment? I mean, most people are seeking a mystical experience, but it's not that, is it? It's not an experience, you say. So
No.
what
no.
actually is it?
It's the end of seeking experiences. It's the end of seeking anything. It's you realise that it's not this thing that you get. It's letting go of wanting anything, letting go every moment of wanting anything.
You mentioned something today in your meditation about letting go of your life every moment, completely, like every aspect of your life.
I felt that really strongly today. It was like every moment I was letting go of my whole life. There was no memory, no time, no space, no anything. It's really hard to describe, but it's just like this incredibly deep letting go of myself every moment. Realising that it's not really my life anymore. It's not my anything anymore. It's just what's happening, and there's no resistance to what's happening.
Speaking to you earlier, you mentioned that it took you a while to realise you'd actually got to this point. You were in it for a while, and then you suddenly came to that place where you realised this is it. Why did it take that time for you to realise that?
I think I had to adjust to it. There's definitely an adjustment period. I think it really started happening, the final enlightenment phase, realisation, when I was in Japan. That's when it really started happening. But I was so engulfed by the whole thing, so overawed by it, I didn't really know what was happening. And it took me a while to actually sort of catch up to the whole thing and to realise what was happening, because it was all happening so quickly. The I was just gone, and there was no one there to know whether anyone was enlightened or not. It was just this place.
And when it finally dawned on you, what was that moment about? Like when you suddenly saw it?
It was like a fairy tale coming true. That's how it felt. It felt sort of like alchemy, like something that had seemed so ethereal and unattainable suddenly became real. It was quite, I remember when this started happening, it was during a meditation retreat, and it was like everything just became real and reality became solid rather than this thing I was trying to get that I couldn't put my finger on.
I mean, many are striving for this, and not many achieve it. Why did it happen for you?
I don't know. I still wonder about that. You know, why me? But maybe the question is, why not me? And that's why not many people do. I don't know if attain is the right word, or become enlightened, let go of being enlightened, realise the self, whatever you want to call it, because they don't believe it could happen to them. I think a lot of it was to do with my teacher. He kept saying it's possible, you know, it's really possible, and then it's very, very possible, and then I feel like it's going to happen. And I just trusted him. Why I trusted him, I don't know. It was something in me. So, I mean, I still feel that. Why me? But also, why not me? I mean, why not you? I mean, what's in the way?
Good question. I mean...
It's because you don't feel it's possible for you.
Okay.
That's what's in the way.
So you're saying that if you totally believe it 100%, it's just inevitable?
Well, it's not even a matter of believing, it's a matter of trust. I trusted my teacher.
Right.
I trusted what he said. he gave me detailed guidance on what to do. And I know a lot of people feel that there's not a path and there's no effort needs to be made, but he gave me specific instructions on my meditation practice. And I could see it was working. You know, there was a definite progression of, or a deepening of consciousness, of my awareness. And I could see it, it was obvious. And so I started to trust that in myself. I trusted him because it just worked, and there was just something in him that I trusted. The truth, I just trusted that. So it wasn't a matter of belief, you know, nobody can tell you that you can become enlightened. You have to experience it in yourself. I mean, not experience enlightenment, but have those experiences that give you more and more trust.
Yeah. Was there a point in your journey? I mean, it only took about, what, 7 years or something? Meditation, 8 years?
Yeah, probably about 8 years.
Yeah. Was there a point where you realised, well, this is possible? I mean, well, was it right at the start? How long before you came to that realisation?
It was fairly early on.
Yeah.
I realised it was possible. And that just became stronger and stronger.
What was it
stronger.
that made that shift in you?
My relationship with my teacher,
Okay.
I'd say. That was, for me, that was the major thing. It was like I just trusted him. I gave up. I could see there was something in him that I just wanted, you know. And it wasn't like I was unhappy before. I was reasonably happy. I mean, I can see now that I wasn't really happy, but it wasn't like I had a traumatic childhood or a traumatic life. I had a partner, I had children, I had a pretty good life. But I was always looking for this depth. And when I met Peter, and it wasn't the first time, it was after I'd met him a few times, suddenly something clicked. And it was like I could see my potential in him. I could see myself in him and my potential, and suddenly realised this is what I want and it's possible for me. If it's possible for him, why not me? And it's true, if you want it enough and you have the right guidance, why not?
Where does the motivation to be liberated come from?
From suffering.
From suffering. Okay. Can you explain that? Why? What, are you saying that we need to suffer to want freedom?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to suffer incredibly to really want, to really become free. It's not the deep ecstatic experiences that are going to spur you on. They can actually hold you back. And they hold a lot of people back because they have this experience and they want to repeat it. They want to hold on to it. It's the suffering that you know you don't want and that you see more and more clearly the deeper you get into it that really pushes you on, because you can't stand still. With a deep experience, you know, some people have even an awakening and they might have had it 20 years ago and they're still talking about it, remembering it and all that sort of stuff. But with suffering, it's like you just don't want to stay in it. So it's like it's behind you, pushing you. That
happened to you, didn't it? In Japan, there was a point where you just had enough. And what happened? Can you explain? Like that moment when you decided this is it?
Well, I mean, no, it was suffering most of the time there. But there was a meditation retreat. It was my last week there. And there was a week's meditation retreat. And before the retreat, it was like I felt, okay, this is it. I'm just going to make the most of it, really get into it. And the day before, I started to feel sick. There was this woman who'd come over from America and she'd had this terrible bronchial thing. She ended up getting bronchial pneumonia and it just went right through the whole monastery. And I was one of the first ones to get it, and it was just before the retreat. And I don't often get sick, but all I could do during that retreat was just survive rather than trying to do anything, get anywhere. I just had to completely give up. And that's what happened. I just gave up doing anything, and just survived the retreat, did every sitting, and I did. It's not like I felt ecstatic or anything, but I can see now that was perfect. It was what I needed, because I'd been working so hard before that. And that wasn't the end, there was another 6 months of really adjusting to the whole thing, and there was still I did a few retreats that were quite difficult, but I can see that was the turning point. Yeah, the real turning point.
Actually, my next question was, what was the change in viewpoint or perspective that happened to you when that came about? Like what is that shift in viewpoint from?
Well, it's a shift of seeing me as the centre of the universe,
right,
to losing that reference point that you're so used to using. Everything didn't revolve around me anymore. It was more like I just revolved around everything else, or there wasn't any I just became everything else.
Right. Yes. So how do you recognise that a true enlightenment's taken place? One for yourself, and then for a student seeking a teacher that's enlightened.
Well, for me, there wasn't any question about it. Before that time, I was always questioning myself. There was always some doubt. I'd have some sort of experience and think, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. I was always hoping maybe this is it. But when I knew it had happened, when that just stopped, and that's probably why it took time too, because I didn't realise that I'd stopped asking about it, because I was in it. Whereas before that, I was still wondering whether this was it. But there's no wonder anymore. There's just it.
Yes.
There are no questions about it at all. I didn't feel like I needed any sort of confirmation from anyone. I mean, I did tell my teacher, but what had happened, but I didn't really care what he said. I didn't feel like I needed any confirmation at all. Whereas before that, I always wanted his approval. I was always seeking his approval and encouragement, and that just all went.
Yeah.
I didn't need anyone's approval.
Okay. And what about a student that's seeking an enlightened teacher? I mean, how do they gauge? What are the signs or the marks of enlightenment? What should they be looking for in a teacher?
No, it's a difficult one, really, because I know to me now I can see it, and before I suppose I could see it to an extent too. I think a depth that you feel is lacking in yourself.
Okay.
A depth, stillness. I mean, there are some teachers around who have probably had quite a strong awakening, but they're not really fully there.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult because before enlightenment you're so used to judging things on the surface, so you judge things like enlightenment by people's behaviour. And I know I used to do that too. I'd see someone like Barry Long in the supermarket and think, he doesn't look very happy, He's looking at the ingredients just like everyone else. And the thing is, you become completely ordinary.
Yeah.
And it's often difficult to spot.
So, what hope is there of an unenlightened person recognising the enlightenment before them? I mean, there's people that come and go in your meditation centre. Some stay, some go. How and what is it that...
I think if you're really ready, you do recognise it.
Okay.
And some people just aren't quite ready, and some are. You recognise that depth, and I think it's mainly a depth, and maybe It's sort of mixed with a simplicity, an ordinariness.
Yes.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
Ordinariness?
I guess so, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Okay, so what's the value of a teacher? Why do we need a teacher?
Because it's so easy to become deluded. It's so incredibly easy to become deluded.
Mm-hmm. And how does the teacher help you? Like, he keeps you on track by pointing it out when it's not the real thing.
Sometimes I just had to look at my teacher and I knew that.
Okay.
And this would be after seeing him a few days before, and I'd become, I could sometimes become deluded in that time. I mean, you need the encouragement of a teacher, and you need a teacher who's still in the body, so that there's not that separation of death, because people see someone who's dead as something different, something separate. Mm. And it's quite easy to idolise someone who's dead too. Yeah. But someone who's alive, you can question them and you can see in their eyes your own potential. There's that connection between you.
Mm. And what motivates you to teach?
Sounds a bit corny, but compassion.
Okay.
Compassion.
Yeah.
What else do I do? I mean, I know how much I suffered, and seeing people who are willing to go through it really fills me with compassion, love. It's worth anything to really be in this state. I know that's what I felt when I was doing my practice, and I can see it in some of my students, this earnestness and determination to really realise this.
And I guess maybe it'd be good to share what the practice is. What do you do? What sort of meditation is it?
Well, it's basic Zen Buddhist meditation, really. I mean, I was always attracted to Zen Buddhism because, well, not always, it was only really the last couple of years of my practice that I got deeply into it. But before that it was basic Buddhist practice anyway. It's just such a simple method. I mean, the actual, what you go through doesn't feel simple, but it's a very simple, quite austere practice with very few rituals. Very little theory. I mean, the way I teach is really ritual free and theory free. I feel practice is the only way to do it. Yeah. Just practice.
Okay. If all is one substance, as you know, isn't the search for enlightenment just another goal for the imagined person to attain an imagined oneness? Did
Say
you
that
grasp
again.
that? Okay, these are one of those questions I told you about earlier. If all is one substance, then this journey towards enlightenment, isn't it just an imaginary journey from an imaginary person to an imaginary oneness until the ultimate experience happens where you...
Well, it's not an imaginary oneness. You only see it as separate because you believe that you're separate. That's in the imagination. But
I guess the question is, if we already are that, and always have been that, and we're just on this process of discovering the truth of that we are not the me that we believe ourselves to be, and we are the vastness of the infinite universe that we are, sorry about the words, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this. What's the point? If we already are that, why do we have to go through such a process to discover what we have always been?
Well, do you know that you're that? Do you realise that you're that?
I don't, to the degree that you, and I'm not asking this question to kind of poke holes in anything.
No.
Look, I've tasted it, but I don't live it totally because I haven't come to that place that you're sitting in, where there's no more me. There's still definitely a me.
There's still a little bit. There's still a little bit. I think as long as you're in the body, there's still a little bit.
Yeah.
There has to be, really.
Okay.
I mean, my main... Oh, maybe I should go on.
No, go on.
My main reason for being here, for still being in this body, is to help other people realise why they're in this body. That's my main motivation. I'm not saying I don't have any personal pleasures left at all or anything like that, but my main motivation for being here is to help others, really.
This is...
I didn't answer your question though, did I?
Well, my question wasn't very direct, I guess. I mean,
it was a bit intellectual.
It was, yeah. And but it was here in front of me, so I had to ask it. So I guess...
I suppose that's why I directed it back at you, because it's more. Look, it's better if you ask from your own experience, and I know these questions are. Yeah.
But there is a bit of truth in that question inside me about that. It's kind of like, when we taste the truth of the unity, and we do that in meditation, we get a real sense of the no-me reality. And for that moment, we're free. What is it that pulls us back into the separateness again when we've seen the truth?
Well, it's the ego, the mind, the I. That's what keeps pulling you in to it, and you have to practice pulling yourself out of that, away from it, staying where you are, which is here. And that takes an incredible amount of practice. And I know people say it's effortless, blah, blah, blah. It's effortless once you're here completely. For me now, I can say it's effortless. I don't have to do anything to stay here. There are still thoughts there, but I just don't, it doesn't matter. I don't go with them. But very few thoughts really, compared to how it was before. It's effortless now, but it's not, but it's incredibly intense at the same time. But to get to that stage of effortlessness, you have to make an incredible amount of effort to just stay here rather than keep being pulled out by the mind and the world and distractions.
Yeah. Okay. Many people, this is going in another direction, but we touched on it earlier. We talked about death. You mentioned death. Many people are curious about life after death. I understand that any answer is speculation, but from your viewpoint, what happens?
Why aren't they more curious about life now than life after death? What are they?
That's a good point.
That's the whole reason. That's the whole thing. People are always interested in something else other than right now.
Right.
And you can only really live if you die to every moment. If, like I was saying, you die to yourself every moment. That's the only way to live. And then you don't give a shit what it's going to be like when you die. You don't care. It's just another unknown. And everything in this state is unknown. You just realise, and maybe that's a better answer to what enlightenment is. It's just the unknown. It's being completely secure in the unknown, in not knowing, realising that you don't know anything. You don't know what's going to happen next. There are things that are probably going to happen next, but you don't know, and in a way you don't care.
this question connects to that one. I'll ask it anyway. If awareness exists prior to the body, okay, it's intellectual again, but anyway, why don't we have memory prior to the birth of the body? If there's awareness prior to being born,
because memory is all to do with the attachment to the body. It's all to do with that, and it starts from when we're babies, and it's encouraged by our parents, but who don't know any better, and society, to keep remembering, and it's all to do with attachment to the body. When there's no body, there's no memory. When you lose the attachment to the body, the memory works in the functional sense, but in the emotional sense, no. There's no attachment to memory. Like, I can remember things, some things, other things I just don't remember. I have to write things down a fair bit, but I'm not going through life trying to remember each moment, because remembering is attaching to things. But it's only there, the emotional attachment to memory is only there when you're attached to the body. When the attachment to the body goes, so much changes, everything changes. Because you realise I am not the body, and I'm still going to be here whether the body's here or not. It doesn't really make much of a difference. I mean, I haven't died physically, so I don't know what happens, but I can see the advantages of not having a body. It's obvious. I mean, there are advantages to having a body too. It's very pleasurable at times having a body, but it's very painful at times having a body too. Physically painful, I mean.
Well, thanks. Back to this idea, if there's only one substance, what is the mind or ego? Do they really exist? And if they do, aren't they awareness also?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that one. I mean, how I see it is that it's all energy, and the mind is like an entity that has gone crazy and is trying to separate us from everything. I can't really say exactly what it is. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, the mind is fine in its place, but it's like as we grow up, it takes hold of us and starts to control us and get us to believe all this stuff. And drags us down to its level. And maybe it's just an entity that's vibrating on a much lower level than pure consciousness, and it's trying to drag everyone down to its level. And enlightenment is becoming free of the mind and really becoming completely freed up and vibrating at an energy level that's life energy, universal energy. And it's a very fast energy. Whereas the mind is always trying to drag you down and separate you from this incredible energy. I don't know if that's very clear.
That's clear. Does the mind survive death, do you think?
If you're free of the mind before death, it hasn't survived anyway. So
right.
I think, I don't really know. My mind won't.
No.
It's not really my mind.
What is it that keeps us so preoccupied and focused on thought, even when we realise that thought is an illusion or it's not the reality?
Again, the attachment to the body.
Yeah. Okay.
Ask me more if it's...
Well,
as long as we're attached to the body and we think that I start and end, I start and end with this body. It's going to rule our lives in every way, every movement we make. Everything we do will be dominated, and you might not be conscious of it on the surface level, but deep down it's going to affect everything that you do, because there's going to be this fear of death, that it's always going to be there. And using the past to try and project onto the future, and the past and future don't exist anyway. I mean, it's crazy when you look at it. Seems to give us some sort of security in who we are in life. But it's a false security. It's ridiculous. It's just trying to use the known to make us feel a bit secure. Whereas when you realise you don't know anything, then your security changes to the unknown, because you realise there's just no security in the past. It's already happened, it's finished.
Thanks. So how does a person get, okay, these words that are clumsy, but how does a person get there or here? What do we need to do? What needs to fall away in order for us to become liberated?
Everything.
Everything.
Not just the things you don't like, it has to be everything.
Yeah.
The things you don't like and the things you like. You have to, what was that saying of Ryokan's? Go as deep into life as you can, and let go of even blossoms.
Yes, right.
That which you find most beautiful,
Right.
you let go of even that. It's an amazing thing. And for me, it took 8 years, or however many years it was. I think it was 8 years, of maybe 7 years, of intensive practice and conscious suffering, of just letting go. Because it's very painful letting go of something that you think is your security, that you think is your lifeline. It's like jumping off a cliff. But you find out it's soft at the bottom, it's fine.
In this moment right now, there's a sense of being aware, of being present without effort. Is
Do
this?
you?
Well, yeah. Yeah. If I stop any moment, then that can be my reality. It's just a matter of remembering to do that, as frequently as possible. But so in this moment here, there's no effort in being present, really, if I can just stop. Is this effortless presence that I'm talking about now and asking you about, is this what we really are?
Well, yes, but I would say what you were just talking about isn't effortless, because you have to remember to do it. In enlightenment, you never have to remember to do it. It's just, you're just always here. In this presence. So that's when it becomes effortless.
Yeah.
But you're still having to make the effort to stop. And once you've stopped, then it feels effortless, but you've had to make an effort for it to become effortless. And eventually you just go into the effortlessness, and you're just here. And you can't help it. It's just the natural state.
And that's who you are? This effortless presence? Okay, if it's always right here, ever present, back to this one. Isn't doing anything to get it taking you away from this?
Oh, no.
Explain why. Because a lot of people say that.
I know they do. They're just lazy bums. I mean, most people are inherently a bit lazy and they want the easy way out, and everyone's looking for the easy way out. As far as I can see, there's no easy way out. The only shortcut is having an enlightened teacher and spending as much time around someone who's enlightened as possible, because that's definitely a catalyst. I know through my own experience that every time I was around my teacher, I had more than one teacher, a few teachers, every time I was around them, it would deeply affect me, and I could feel myself speeding up. It would really affect me.
Can you explain that, speeding up? What do you mean by that?
Well, someone who is free from the mind, as I was saying before, is vibrating, oscillating, operating on a completely different level to most people. It's like their consciousness has sped up to the degree that the mind can never get in again, because it's like the mind's down here and their consciousness is up here, and the mind hasn't got a hope of getting up there. Whereas most people are down still with the mind above them, and sometimes might come up above the mind, and then the mind drags them down again. But it's like you just are vibrating on a purely energetic level, conscious level.
Yeah. Okay. In conclusion,
and I was going to say, if you're around someone like that and you're very open to them, even if you're not open to them, you're going to be affected by them, automatically you start to resonate with that energy, and it starts to speed you up too. And that's why people are so attracted to being around someone who's enlightened, for want of a better word, because they start to feel that pure energy, free from the mind.
Yeah.
And it might not always be comfortable. I mean, it can be very uncomfortable being around someone like that. At times it can really stir you up, and other times it can just feel amazing.
That's true. My last question is, what is the point and purpose of it all? What's going on? Why are we here? What's this all about, Linda?
We're here. We're here to find out why we're here. It sounds so silly, you know. I remember I used to look at insects, you know, like ants, and go, what's the point, you know? They just live and die and blah, blah. I can see the point now. The point really of, like I was saying before, of us being in our bodies is to realise why we're in this body. Why am I in this body? It's to realise I'm not this body. And once you realise that, you don't really need to be in the body except to help other people realise that.
Okay.
Because you know that this body, you know, even though it's quite pleasant at times being in the body, there's not really any great, incredible desire to stay in the body like there was before, because there's no fear of death. But at the same time, I very much enjoy being in this body. But if someone said I had a month to live, I suppose, I don't know how I'd react, but I'm pretty sure it'd be fine. Probably be a bit sad. I have to say goodbye to you, my kids and my partner. And, yeah. But it's no big deal. You realise nothing in the world is a big deal anymore. And the thing that affects me most now is seeing people who really earnestly want to find out the truth of why they're here. I mean, you can't really feel real love or compassion until the I or the ego goes. You just can't, because you're always so concerned with yourself. I mean, that's what motivated me, really. I just got so sick of myself, you know. I was the centre of everything, and I got so sick of that. Someone told me the other day that she remembers me saying at one point, every sentence I say begins with I. I mean, not literally, but... And it was true. I just got so sick of being me. It was such a great pressure, being me. And it's such relief not having to be anyone anymore. It's just so amazing. And people say sometimes they're concerned about not having relationships with people anymore, and the depth of connections with people is just amazing now, compared to how it was before. It was really just on the surface before, because I was always in the way. But when that goes, there's no barrier to anything, to people, situations, anything. And it's worth anything to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.